All right, so the Heat are in the NBA Cup tonight, obviously. They're taking on the Orlando Magic, but you may have seen yesterday online at ESPN.com, Tim Bontemps and Bobby Marks came out with a piece as Terry Rozier. He made his first court appearance yesterday, pled not guilty, and of course, how it relates to the Miami Heat right now. So Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider, joining us now on the program. Bobby, always good to see you, and you're a great person to talk about this, because as a former front office exec, I want to get some perspective here. So first up, when the Heat and the Hornets are making this trade a couple of seasons ago, what responsibility do the Hornets, in your opinion, if you were still a front office exec, what responsibility do you believe the Hornets have in this instance?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, in a normal trade call, so I'll just kind of walk you through. You have to disclose basically anything up to medical information, insurance information, contractually, and then anything else that could prohibit a player from playing basketball here. So if there's certainly a criminal case that is going on, that is the disclosure process. That wasn't disclosed in the case of Terry Rozier because at the time it wasn't a criminal investigation. He had been investigated by the NBA based on an alleged game, and while he was playing with the Hornets. So that's kind of the gray area, right? It's like, should that have been disclosed? Is it the Hornets' responsibility? Is it the NBA's responsibility? I mentioned it on TV yesterday, having gone through investigation while being part of the Nets. The one thing to know is that although a team has found no wrongdoing, or in the case of Rozier, an investigation never is closed. You're never found guilty. The league always kind of leaves it open where you can reopen this investigation here. So that is one of the multiple things here when we're talking about Rozier, whether the fact that he was actually investigated by the NBA should have been disclosed at the time when they made the trade. Now there's a slippery slope here as far as doing that, where you could say, wait a minute, if he was found there's no wrongdoing, that could have potentially killed the trade. So there's a lot to kind of dissect here, but certainly that's one of the main things that we wrote about as far as if that piece should have been disclosed, because I think if it had been, the likelihood is that probably Miami is not doing a trade back in January of 2024.
What did it mean to you that the Hornets declined to comment for the story?
I think it's listen, the current front office in Charlotte was not the front office that made the trade. Jeff Peterson, who's their general manager, was not in that front office at the time. He was hired later. Mitch Kupchak was in charge. I think you can kind of read through the tea leaves as far as know who knew what had been. And I would think, because the league didn't disclose, it's not like there's going to be any wrongdoing from Charlotte, because they're basically kind of taking the cue of kind of what the NBA had not done, which was disclose this piece of information.
Are you surprised that the Heat have not at least made a public stink about this?
No, I mean, I don't think there's been a trade that has presented itself where Miami, there hasn't been Miami right now has 2 first-round picks to trade. If this trade never happened, they would have probably 4 right now. So there hasn't been a deal out there yet. I think if that comes to light, then I think there's probably more, probably it's a little bit more, as you said, a stink as far as what could happen here.
What do you feel like the internal, because, when I say, are you surprised that the Heat have not made a public stink, it's very much not their MO to make a public stink. But internally, have you heard anything from there?
No, I mean, I think the big thing, internally is just some guidance as far as what to do with the Rozier contract. I think that's the biggest thing, because he's not suspended. He's on immediate leave. There's no financial, whether it be against the luxury tax, that there's no savings financially. They're about a $1.6 million under right now.
But they can't trade him, right? Like, can they use his contract?
That's the question that we're going to learn over the next 2 months here is that if Miami has a deal in place, would the NBA allow them to trade Terry Rozier? They should, because here's the thing. Kevin Porter Jr. was arrested when he was a member of the Rockets for domestic abuse, and then was later traded a month later to the Thunder, who eventually waived him. So you would think that even though the player is on immediate leave, his contract would be allowed to be traded if a deal materialized here.
Does this kind of situation hurt the Hornets when it comes to other teams trying to make deals?
I don't think so, because I think this is different, because a lot of this is whether, listen, I'm sure there was an awareness that one of your players was being investigated here. Now it's a matter of them talking. Did they talk to the NBA as far as what had to be disclosed? But as I said earlier, in the bylaws, in the operation manuals, there's a clause in there that anything that would potentially impact a player from playing NBA basketball has to be disclosed. Okay. As I mentioned, the investigation was never closed. It could be reopened again, which eventually happened when Rozier was arrested, by the feds and everything like that. So that's kind of like where, should it have been disclosed? Maybe we're going to see maybe we're going to see rules changed as a result of this here. It's hard for me to say. And as I mentioned also that, there's a different management group in Charlotte also here. So it's not like you're dealing with the same people here. So I don't think so. I think when people renege on a trade, when a trade goes through, like
Charlotte and the Lakers last year,
that makes you think like, wait a minute, like, what type of business should we be going forward as far as if we have a deal and then it gets reneged based on a failed physical? I think that's probably looked at a little bit differently than compared to the situation here.
Let's talk a little bit of basketball here, a little bit of actual basketball. The Heat are in the NBA Cup quarterfinals tonight for the first time in their team's history. They're at Orlando, 6 p.m. start. Bobby, 6 p.m. Eastern start. That's beautiful. That's tonight at 6 p.m. Heat and Magic. You're usually in on the Heat, but this year is a very different version of the Heat than we have seen in a very, very long time. What have you made of the Heat so far this season? Do they have a shot at making a little run here?
I know. It feels like there's been 82 games in the first 24, 25 games here. It's funny. You kind of have an idea of kind of who teams are after 25 games. I thought I had certainly what Spo was able to do with this offense and transform it. And they got off to certainly a great start. And then it feels like they've kind of gotten a little bit of fatigue. I think a little bit running on empty here, and the Kings lost, which, at home. The Orlando game was a good game. They lose that kind of at the end. So there's been a little bit of a struggle lately. I'm interested to see what Miami team we get tonight in Orlando, who you just played a week ago and lost by, I think, a point or two without Franz Wagner here. So I think the expectations coming into this season was like, hey, listen, this is probably a team that can compete for a play-in spot, right? And then all of a sudden you have a really good stretch of games, and this offense has changed dramatically, and Norm Powell's playing like an all-star. And you get Tyler back here, and you're still playing at a high level, and then you've kind of stubbed your toe a little bit here. I don't think there's any clear favorite in the Eastern Conference, as you know. I think it is wide open. I think it's just a matter of kind of how you get separation. So I think in totality, I think I like what I've seen with Miami here, because you basically have returned most of the same parts that got humiliated in the first round against Cleveland, outside of making that Norm Powell trade.
What do you make right now of what's going on with Ja Morant? You don't really know what to believe when it comes to, the Heat have discussed about Ja Morant. I don't think it's a fit. I don't think it's a fit based on his style of play. I don't think it's a fit based on, one of the new advisors for the team was an assistant coach of Memphis last year that tried to change the style of play that the Heat are using right now that Ja Morant pushed back against. There's several reasons why I don't think Ja Morant's a good fit. What do you make of that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you as far as the fit. I think as you watch this offense, it's a read and react offense, right? The ball doesn't stick. That would be my concern with Ja here. I think what is the cost also? I think you have to kind of keep your options open. If other things become available down the road, we'll see how the Giannis situation plays out over the next couple months. I think the last thing you want to do is use some of your trade assets or expiring contracts in a Ja type deal. As you know, if it's not Ja, there's be something else that pops open here to keep, as I said, with your options here. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, listen, Memphis has played really good basketball without Ja Morant.
Yeah.
I think they have a little bit more of an identity defensively, at least, and they're with Edie and Jackson, and they've gotten some good guard play and everything. So yeah, for me it doesn't make sense as far as the fit in Miami.
Lastly here, Bobby, Ja Morant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, trade deadline in February. Both are still on their current teams. Neither are still on their current teams.
Oh man, that's a tough one. The Giannis situation is interesting here, just because what's been going on since May, it feels like here. I think he plays a big role as far as what happens with where his next team is, or if it's Milwaukee, because if it's not now, meaning now till February, Milwaukee's going to have a decision in the offseason when he's extension eligible and what happens if he doesn't extend. As you know, also in-season trades are hard to do. Mm-hmm.
The
dynamics there, man, I guess if I'm maybe we put AD up there too. I would think I'd probably be more likely AD gets traded than those two players there.
I think it's almost in Milwaukee's interest as well to move on from Giannis here.
It is. And, it's hard, having been in a front office, I understand the logic, right? You're basically hanging on for dear life when you have a franchise level player. But as you know, and you've watched, whether it be Miami or some of these, eventually your roster maxes out, right? Like you basically hit an expiration. Like you can't keep on adding, and because eventually you just run out of pieces that you can add here. So that,
and they had success. It worked. They accomplished the goal.
Yeah, they won an NBA championship, and John Horst, whether it be trading for Holiday or Lillard, or waiving Lillard and trading draft picks here, there's not much left to this roster to turn around. It's like Turner and Kuzma. I don't know what that gets you, and when you only have a 2032nd first to go out and do a deal. So yeah, I know starting over stinks, but I do think it would be interesting what direction, if he does become available, does Milwaukee just want to get players that can help now? Because remember, they don't control their draft pick until 2031.
Bobby, excellent job as always. Thanks for making some time today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.